Hi all. So today I'm joined by Sascha. Thanks a million, Sascha, for joining us. We're going to do a brief video talk on how to help students and primarily dyslexic students during this lockdown time. Both myself and Sascha work directly with students, so we're going to give you a brief overview as to some of our tips and tricks that we've learned over the last few weeks, and hopefully they'll be of some help to you. Initially, we'll just maybe give a brief outline of ourselves. So Sascha, maybe if you want to go first and you can talk us a bit about your background and what areas you work in.
Yes, thanks, Una. I am a dyslexia specialist. I've been working with dyslexics for, gosh, nearly 20 years now. And so I suppose I'm at the coalface with all ages, but mostly teenagers. I also had a book published in 2018 called At Home with Dyslexia. I'm going to do some product placement here.
Great.
And so it is a guide for parents, and it's also very dyslexia friendly, because obviously dyslexia is genetic and often parents have dyslexia too. So I suppose my main focus is finding solutions and being positive about dyslexia, seeing the genuine and how we can come up with creative strategies to help and support.
Great. Perfect. Thanks a million. I'll go now so that you're finished. So my background is I went to school in Cork City. I went to school there, then I went on to study in UCC. I'm highly dyslexic myself, so I greatly studied both through my primary really and secondary school education, but also my university education. My business is obviously more shortcoming than Sascha's. So my business is called Blossom4Life. It's been kind of running now for about over a year. And it provides tuition very similar to Sascha, to people with learning difficulties, primarily dyslexia. I suppose my main aim is to help prevent people struggling or help prevent people having the same issues that I would have faced myself both in school and university. Very simple strategies and techniques to help them on their path to education, but also further along in life. So I know people that are adults or further along in their career that want to fine tune goals and skills. So it's kind of catering for all age demographics. Great, so that's a bit about both of us. So we're just going to maybe combine a few tips and tricks either separately and together. So feel free to ask us any questions obviously afterwards if you want to follow up, but at the moment we'll just kind of keep things flowing. So Sascha, maybe do you want to kick off with one or two of your recommendations and we can go from there?
Yes, okay, so obviously in the current situation, this is my main emphasis at the moment, and what I'm finding with my students, who I'm now having to see online one-to-one, is they are feeling extremely overwhelmed and stressed by the sudden change in the way that they are being taught. They already find it difficult to organize themselves and deal with time management, and now this is being ramped up 10 times more. So I think the main focus should be for dyslexics that that they can have some help and support around time management. So it would be a good idea to be able to discuss what they have to do that week with somebody else, and like have a grid or something. So like what I do with my students is like we have like these little, I don't know if you can see that, like subject thingy grids, and also
great. So maybe afterwards you could put that as well, maybe on your social media page or something, Sash. We can link it in with the video so people can print it off if they want the grid.
Yeah, so that's what my students would do. They would print it off, and then we would talk about what they need to do for the week or how they want to organize their time. And that is just another way to try and help them feel less overwhelmed, to get rid of the stresses.
And I suppose the main advantages we hope to gain from that timetable is, again, if people are under time pressure, if they have exams or they're not sure if they're going to have exams either. Obviously, we're in that dilemma at the moment. It's mapping out and balancing your time so that stuff is all allocated, really. I suppose that's what we're getting at with having a timetable or a schedule, that people still maintain their exercise or socializing online, let's say with their friends, but mapping in that bit of time for education is really important. We all know, let's say during the pandemic at the moment, that hours and hours could pass, or, you know, we're 5-6 weeks in, that time could pass quite quickly now if people don't actually map out and allocate their time. Let's say my 10 to 1 is going to be my study time, and I'm going to look at these 3 or 4 subjects. So having that consistency, I suppose, really in discipline to sit down for that time helps get stuff done and helps, I suppose, keep the train and the progress moving. Really.
Definitely. Unfortunately, a lot of it is dependent on how a particular school is organising everything. So the more motivated students are the ones that have a proper structure to their day given by the school, with Google Classroom and things like that, and also teachers that and very few teachers seem to be doing this really, but they have set times of giving homework and when to do work, and that they give them feedback. And there's a lack of continuity, I think. I know this is a strange time, and things have got, you know, people have got to adapt, but I think there's a lack of awareness of the allowances that need to be made for students with dyslexia.
Completely.
That yes, and you understand that, that they need continuity. They need all teachers to be doing the same thing and doing the same things at the same times every week and trying to give some sort of normality.
Yeah, so I suppose in relation to that, then we would suggest maybe if you're a student watching, that it might be good advice to maybe link in with that teacher if there's a particular area, let's say a math subject, that you find, let's say, slightly more challenging. Maybe link in with that teacher and re-emphasize, listen, again, I know we've linked in, but I do have a learning difficulty. I learn completely differently. So this process mightn't be working for me, where you upload homework. Can we come to some sort of arrangement? You know, is there something that we can work on together? Can you give me separate work at this set time? You know, I suppose teachers are out there, they are willing to, let's say, accommodate people's needs as well. They definitely, and it's a learning platform for everybody. They don't know either what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. So by you maybe linking in with them, that helps give them direction as well. So definitely, even for my leaving or even some of the younger years, definitely suggest getting on to that particular teacher or a few teachers and say, look, this is what I need. Can you help me with that? If not, at least you tried, but it's always a good progress, you know, progress in the right direction to link in with them.
I completely agree. And what I'm finding with even my Leaving Cert students, they are a bit fearful of doing that because I often suggest, well, why don't you just contact that teacher and ask for one-to-one help? Because obviously they're really missing that face-to-face work, that they can sit in the classroom and ask a question in that moment to that teacher and just discuss it with them. They are, dyslexic students particularly, are so missing that. So there's definitely no harm in just contacting the teacher and asking them to go over that maths question with them. I think teachers are happy to do that, or they're glad to see them keen and interested. They might be, quite flattered that they're doing that. But I think a lot of students are actually fearful of taking that step, and I would say, go for it.
And I suppose that will be quite natural, let's say, around that age demographic. We're aware, that, let's say, they're still progressing from that teenage to adulthood, everything's still maturing and developing. So we completely understand. We're not expecting you to, jump through hoops or anything like that. However, we always try to keep what's your end goal in mind. So your end goal obviously is to sit the leaving and progress in either further education or to a different path that you want to go on. So regardless, you kind of need, and we're all kind of on the same path with that, you do need some form of Leaving Cert qualifications to go do that. So it's to help you, I suppose, gain what you want. So the teacher isn't going to be put out if you send them an email or do anything like that, whereas it could drastically impact your results. So it's what's the benefit for me, really, by me doing that email. It's not just you're sending a random email given out to a teacher. It's that this actually could have a potential payoff and could impact where I end up in a few years' time. So it could have a major benefit.
And it's just about having a little bit of confidence to just
Yeah.
assert themselves and say, can we just go over that topic? You know, I'd like to just go over that and ask a few questions. I think they will feel a lot better for themselves and less bogged down and confused by topics, by
Completely.
certain areas.
Yeah, and definitely, like as we were mentioning, as our first point was linking it with the time management. I suppose a very important area we're trying to get across again is that obviously, yes, exams may potentially be looming, but a balance is really important. I know myself and Sascha, we link in with that a good bit. You have to still maintain some level of somewhat normality, even though I know it's not always normal at the moment, but having some element of normality in your day-to-day. It can't just be consistently books. We understand completely that, let's say there's Google Classrooms or there's live videos, and then there's a load of homework depending upon how active the student is engaging with the school. So it's still about balancing that. You know, if they want it set and they want it in by 5 o'clock on a Friday, there is always allowances to be made. You can't do every particular subject. You can't do every English, Hamlet or Shakespeare question. You know, there's always allowances to be made for students that are willing to, let's say, show that they're interested and show that they cooperate. So it can't, well, I suppose our main thing is they can't trade off with doing exercise, getting fresh air, like watching the sleep and the food, all of those core principles that we all need, regardless of if you're a student or not. We're human beings at the end of the day before anything else. And that would be from your side as well, Sascha. You advocate a lot of that stuff as well, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes. You know, there are still one or two that are getting up at midday. This is not good. You know, it is a good idea to get up early and quite, you know, they're going for runs within their 2 kilometres. Good exercise. Yes, I think getting out and exercise seems to be the main thing.
Yeah.
But also to maintain motivation again is if they are doing work for the teacher, they actually get some feedback, or that they're doing tests and seeing how they're progressing. I think that is that's all part of it as well. But yeah, the well-being is the most important thing. If they could, I suppose, try and do their schoolwork within like normal school day hours and then relax for the rest of the day and look after their well-being.
Definitely. And again, on your point of some students staying into midday, I suppose, and that's difficult, you know, this is the longest period of time, let's say, that they'll be off school, and that definitely is some bit of a pattern for some students. But then I think it's very important for a student to maybe assess where their peak, let's say, learning time is. So if it's really early in the morning, if it's afternoon, if it's evening. Personally, I was always an evening studier. So I literally would, that's where I get all my ideas. That's where I used to consistently my amount of study and projects, both for school and for college. So naturally, I would then have to sleep till 12. That was always my excuse because let's say I was always up so late. So it depends. You can't have it both sides, really, is where we're coming from. You can't, you know, go to bed early and then stay to 12. What we're saying is understand where your peak hours are and try and tailor to that. And you think that side as well, Sascha, from your students?
I do actually, yeah. I would have one or two who are late night workers. So that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
And it would depend, like, totally on the personality, on the person themselves. And it's hard to gauge that. Maybe going back when I was in secondary school, I mightn't have known that that was a pattern for me. So it's okay if you don't know if you're a morning, afternoon, evening time studier, but maybe change around. So maybe on a 3 or 4 day basis, maybe try like a small bit in the morning and then see did that resonate, or try a small bit in the afternoon and see did that resonate, and then versus the evening. And within maybe a few days of you trialing and erroring, you'll understand, right, I kind of learned more, I was kind of more able to handle that level of information at that time. Maybe that's the time that I work with, you know.
Of course, also that depends on the structure that the school is giving, because there are some schools that are then having, okay, we're having a class at this time as we always did.
Yeah.
But I do think the ones that are doing better in terms of motivation are definitely the ones that have been given more of a structure from school.
Mm-hmm.
They are handling it much better.
Completely, yeah. And always end goal in sight. You know, I know it's harder for, let's say, the younger years, but what's your end goal? Is it that you want to just go on to the next year in school? Is it that you just want to do well? Is it for leaving and you want to go to college? What's your end goal? And having that some way visual. So maybe writing it down, having it on a sticky note, or having it on a desk where you're studying, or having it up on your wall. What's my end goal? Because obviously, particularly for the leaving certs, that's been pushed out a few weeks, and the kind of demoralization can occur. But it's still really important. If you want to get to college and you want to achieve X amount of points, those type of things, that's not going to change unless COVID has another dramatic impact that we're not aware of. There's still going to be some element, who knows.
You know, nothing is certain. Even, I mean, I don't want to discuss it, but you know, we still don't really know what's going to happen. But I think it's better that things haven't been cancelled at the moment. It definitely gives them some structure, motivation, even if their summer is ruined.
Yeah, and definitely. And until things are fully certain, it's always best to continue on with, let's say, what you've been doing, continue on with the subjects, continue on with books. Because I suppose definitely what's been happening with the junior cert is obviously that it was supposed to be postponed, then it was going to be, they were doing September, and now lots of schools are now doing their own assessments in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
so,
interesting. Yeah.
So there's lots of changes there for some students. Let's say they stopped and thought they do no exams and took like 2-3 weeks off, and now realizing actually no, I have to go back now and study. So that's a difficult scenario because you're out of the study mode already and you have to try and get back in quite quickly.
Which do you think it's worst for? Which year is it worst for, do you think, this current situation?
I think definitely just from a pressure perspective, like definitely from my own background, like the leaving cert pressure was just second to none. I don't think I've ever experienced anything to the same level, hopefully never will, touch wood. But on top of trying to manage COVID, I can't even imagine how strange that would be. Personally, for me though, I was definitely a home studier, home environment, really wanted my structure, and I could create that at home. So it's hard to resonate now, but definitely bits of this. And I have some students that do really suit this. They're like, this is great. I don't have to go in at that time and sit in a classroom. They don't learn in that environment. They create their own structure and learn at home. And I think for some students that will excel and that will pay off. So that will affect their results. That might affect, they'll change the AO course and they might go to a higher course that they didn't think, let's say, they might get points for, but might have a huge interest in. So it is suiting some. There's no point in saying not. It is definitely suiting some, and it's not suiting others. And it's just important to recognize kind of which boat you're in and try and see how you can turn it into some sort of positive.
Yes, I think it depends. Again, it depends very much on how they're being taught. Dyslexics are very sensitive to how they are being taught, and they need multi-sensory strategies. So the teachers that are doing PowerPoints and discussing things and giving short little tests and things like that, you know, something visual and auditory is proving to be quite useful, and a lot of students are finding that very good. But then there are other approaches that haven't been working. So a multi-sensory approach is definitely what they need. And I do notice, because I'm seeing their study areas and everything, because we're doing all this one-to-one, quite a few have swivel chairs. Is that a swivel chair? And the
typical dyslexic.
Yes, and it's like, oh yeah, because they need movement as well. They need they're kinesthetic tactile learners. So they're sitting in their swivel chairs and hopefully in a sort of their own little quiet study space, and that works for them. Yeah,
so very good point on the study space thing, Sascha, because obviously very used to, let's say, maybe doing after school study or those type of things and be constantly surrounded in a school environment. Now they're not. They might be at home. They might not be have a dedicated study space. They might have to share it with other siblings. So I suppose on that, it's really important, definitely from a dyslexic, but any student, having the right and correct study environment is vital. Like to understand information, take it in, and concentrate and focus. So obviously with that, limiting obviously phone use, you know, those type of things. Obviously you'll have your laptop if you need to do stuff online, but limiting social media, and you do have to be very disciplined with that, and a clear space. So where possible, not to have all your books and all your exam papers on top of your desk, or all the stacks of homework, having that maybe in a pile separately, and having a clear area. That would be what I would suggest. Sascha, from your perspective, what would you think?
Yeah, these are all very difficult things, aren't they? Being self-disciplined, having a tidy study space. This is difficult for dyslexics, well, different for lots of students. And to be able, you know, depends on your home situation, your home space, whether you can have a quiet space. It's very challenging, and a lot of them are have always done supervised study, or you know, they would go to the library to work, and they're finding it very difficult to work at home. I have no real solution for that, other than that hopefully there can be a space allocated for them, and the other household members appreciate that, and that there's some quiet for them. But if they do need to listen to music on their headphones to help, then let them, you know, because that stops all the other interaction and sounds in the house, distract them. Or if they need to go out and run about and move about, then let them.
Completely. And from all ages, definitely. With classes now that both of us are doing online, definitely within maybe 45 to an hour, they'll get up, you know, they'll do, I was telling Sasha, they'll do a run around the house, they'll run out to the post box and back, those type of things. Typical countryside living, obviously, run out to the post box. But, you know, those type of things are really important. And again, that's just not there for when we're doing class, maybe with the student. That's there when they're doing study, let's say, or homework themselves at home. So it's really important, let's say, for the younger age group, but also for teenagers, to have that cap when you're like, right, I just need to go outside now for 2 minutes, get some fresh air, and then come back in. Really important to take those breaks like you would as well in school. So obviously the bell goes and you change gear, you change classroom, and you are very used to that. I'm finding some, definitely, particularly for leaving certs, are slotting in their 3 hours or their 4 hours or whatever, and actually going straight through, you know, and just not splitting it up, you know. They're just
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, you know. And again, each person has their own strategy, but from a learning capacity, probably not the best way of retaining information.
Yeah, would you agree that, I mean, everyone's to their own, but it could be just 25 minutes of concentrated work, and then needing a break, and then come back for another 25 minutes, and that can often be more productive for them when they're studying.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the area that you're what you're doing at the time. So let's say if you're writing out a question, or if you're answering a long question, sometimes obviously it'll take a bit longer. And if you're trying to tap into the time allocated based upon the exam, so let's say if you're doing your Shakespeare question, or you're writing out your poetry, try and tap into obviously what's the set amount of time that I'll hopefully have to do this whenever the exams take place, and then do it in that amount of time, you know. So I wouldn't always say, let's say, do 20 minutes and get up and come back again if you're in the middle of a question. But let's say if you're studying proper material, let's say if you're doing out a mind map, or you're studying it, trying to retain it into your brain, definitely short is crucial. Definitely short snippets of stuff, and then consistently going back. But on to what we were saying earlier, Sascha, was, let's say, how do we kind of help grow that process? And I suppose other aspects linking into your sensory side might be, let's say, brain training. So lots of different apps I know were really important, let's say, before, you know, Nintendo and all that stuff. I remember a few years ago they came out with all these brain training things. Definitely for me, when I was doing my Leaving Cert, I found there's and it's a desktop, it's a computer website, sorry. It's I don't think they have an app version of it, but it's called Luminosity. So there's loads of them out there. Obviously you don't have to go with this particular one, but you can just log in and you just do 5-10 minutes of like some games or puzzles and moving stuff around, and it just changes the wavelength in your brain. You know, you'd find those useful as well, wouldn't you, Sascha, of trying to mix things up a bit?
Yeah, yes. You mean like a relaxation thing, but just something to concentrate. And it's a de-stressor doing those little things as well.
Completely, yeah, yeah, and it helps actually with the rate of processing. So definitely compared to, let's say, my initial dyslexia assessment, which was done a good long time ago, and I did one in the last, let's say, maybe 2 years, year and a half. It has changed the stats because I've actually changed some of the wiring of my brain by doing those quite consistently. And you build up speed. So it's not saying that I'm not dyslexic anymore, but it's saying that, let's say, it definitely has a big impact, you know, and it definitely is something that breaks up maybe a study time or a particular time in the day, something that's kind of in some form of game format, even though I know we try and want to stay away from as much of that stuff possible. But you do need bits of that to keep just things moving along, you know. I think, or jigsaws, or, you know, Sudoku word searches, anything on a paper format as well is great.
Colouring, anything, doing art, making things. Actually, quite a few of my students are baking.
Great.
They're doing, there's a lot of baking cakes and biscuits and all sorts, and that's probably very therapeutic.
Completely, yeah. And definitely, like, we're going back to the exercise thing, definitely maybe bits of yoga, hugely on the mindfulness. Obviously, I know it's still a growing concept, especially for teenagers, but it's definitely something that, particularly when you're doing the Leaving Cert, to try and tap in on maybe 5 minutes if you can, to just sit there and stay somewhat present and connected to yourself. Really important to help try and alleviate the stress.
Yeah. Oh, well-being is yes, at the moment for me it's time management, motivation and well-being are the things that we really need to focus on. And I think they shouldn't be so hard on themselves. I think a lot of students are, I think they should give themselves a break. These are unprecedented times, and also I think teachers need to make allowances for the current situation for dyslexic students who need more time to process information, need some strategies, some organisation and time management support. But then, yeah, to also, to not beat themselves up, to give themselves a break. It's very important.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of compassionate and tuning back in with, actually, realistically, you know, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a major impact. I know it's very hard to see that when you're doing a Leaving Cert. You think it's the end goal of life entirely itself, but it's really not, you know. And it's obviously hard for people to say that, but both of us, you know, everybody to some level has progressed through that stage and have been through it. So there is survival, or there is life after Leaving Cert. So it's definitely trying to keep that in mind, that, you know, your core well-being and health, both mental and physical, takes priority. You know, really, that's the end game. That's the most important aspect. And going back to what we were saying there, just about the brain training. So another company that both Sascha and I work with the odd time is Your Ability. So James Northridge runs a Your Ability online assistive technology platform, both for SNAs, but for parents and for students. So again, our main area probably is non-assistive technology, but we'd encourage people, if, let's say, assistive technology obviously is a huge part and a huge growing part to learning difficulties and being dyslexic, and he has huge help, really, both for me personally. I've used a number of ranges of software that has helped get me to where I am now. So it's definitely an area that people need to tap in on, and maybe linking in with Your Ability or seeing what's on their site might help those people that maybe have concerns about how we kind of tap into that area. Any other final comments from you, Sascha, that you think that we need to resonate across?
I would also say that study clicks is very good. So, like, for example, with my second years, who are probably my second most stressed year after the Leaving Cert, surprisingly, because they are teaching themselves now. They're teaching themselves topics that have to be covered in second year, and that is really difficult for them. So study clicks is very useful because there's videos and notes there's exam questions and the marking scheme, and they can look at topics and test themselves, make sure they're understanding the topic, and it's a bit of motivation. So yeah, I think study clicks is really good in these times.
Great. And one last part actually that dawned on me there was back to obviously the COVID situation. Again, majorly important, I think, for everybody, but definitely for students, is kind of limiting news. You know, definitely news, I suppose, is becoming some bit of it. It was always somewhat negative anyway, personally, I thought, but definitely obviously now you can, you know, people can have it on even 24 hours a day now, even in the background, and there's always something going on. There's always a problem or an issue. So specifically if you're trying to learn and trying to, I suppose, create that calm, relaxing environment, having that negativity either in the background or being playing downstairs definitely has an impact on your study. So where possible, again, if there's obviously other people living at home, parents, if they want to listen to it, that's totally fine. But where possible for you yourself as a student to try and very much limit any constant updates. What you need to know, you'll be told at some stage if it's about your exams, but everything else doesn't need to be taking up memory RAM in your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Great. Okay, perfect. So we'll just wrap up because obviously we want to keep it short and sweet if people have to go back to study and those type of things. Again, we'll put in a few of our links of some stuff that we spoke about. If people have any questions, feel free either to get on to myself at una@blossom4life.com, or Sascha, do you want to?
I have a website, dyslexiasupport.ie, so they can find my email there. They can contact me via the website. And,
Great.
you can find out my book about At Home with Dyslexia, because we are at home with dyslexia right now. So it's quite pertinent at the moment.
Exactly. And also both of us have obviously our own social media platforms, so feel free to link in for further upcoming videos. And also if people want us to do another follow-up or of any set topics they'd like us to look at, please feel free to get in contact.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a million for your time. Thank you, Sascha, for all your words of advice. Thank you.